In this video, I'm going to go through how animals are used in Mice and Men. Make sure to like and subscribe to my channel for regular revision videos. One way animals are used is that Lennie is consistently compared to an animal throughout the whole novella. He's described as being like a bear dragging his paws. He snorts into the water like a horse. Similarly, like a terrier who doesn't want to bring a ball to its master, Lennie approached. He covers his face with huge paws and bleated with terror, and he pawed up the hay until it partly covered her. Now, obviously, in each particular instance, there are kind of more subtle meanings. However, in the kind of overall sense, why is he compared to an animal? Well, firstly, it's an image of strength. So he's compared to a horse, a bear, multiple times. These are powerful animals, and we know that Lennie is a very powerful, strong, big man. However, also animals, they are not sadistic. Animals are pure in the sense that, yes, they might kill another animal, but they don't do it because of some sadistic pleasure or because they're murderers. They do it because that's just nature. And I think the constant comparison to animals with Lennie shows his innocence. He doesn't mean to kill Curley's wife. He does it because of an instinct, because of the way he is. So the way he's compared to animals throughout just, I think, emphasises that. It also places Lennie in the kind of, if we think about the very beginning and end of the novella, with the kind of cyclical structure of them being in the brush. The brush is this very kind of natural Garden of Eden style imagery with the animals coming out. It's very much the image is kind of this natural beauty, and I think it takes Lennie out of the man-made world, which is corrupt, and it places him more in that kind of natural, innocent goodness. So it presents Lennie as being this overall good character. So when we're thinking about why John Steinbeck's done this, we might be thinking about what he's saying about how men, and I mean humankind, through things like capitalism and the way society's been constructed, it's actually a kind of aberration on nature. The mouse is also such an important symbol throughout of Mice and Men. First of all, it's in the title, and the title alludes to this poem by Robert Burns, To a Mouse. The best laid schemes of mice and men gang after gley, and leave us with naught but grief and pain for promised joy. Now, this poem, To a Mouse by Robert Burns, basically describes this mouse who builds itself a little home, and then the plough comes and just destroys everything, and the mouse is left with nothing. So, first of all, this obviously alludes to the theme of dreams and the idea that, like mice, men can kind of work on their dreams, and then actually the power of something like the plough can just come and destroy everything. So we've got this really clear image of what happens to George and Lennie and Candy, where they have this dream of getting their own land, and then that dream is destroyed. And we've also got that connotation of kind of power, there being these bigger, powerful structures. The mouse can never stand up to the plough. So it's quite a hopeless idea as well, that like actually individual people like George, Lennie, the ranch workers, cannot stand up against the big kind of societal forces at play, which are causing migrant workers to move around, the Great Depression, etc. It really evokes that feeling of hopelessness and the kind of destruction of the American dream. And even at the beginning, Lennie has a dead mouse in his pocket, and he keeps, killing mice. And John Steinbeck, I think, there is really linking the idea of Lennie never being able to achieve his dream by the mouse symbolising this dream that can't be fulfilled, and Lennie constantly killing them. Similarly, animals are used as a foreshadowing tool to foreshadow Curley's wife's death. Lennie, in that way, kills the mice. It then increases and he kills a puppy, and then it increases and he kills Curley's wife. But in all of these instances, there is no malice involved. There is no intent. He just likes stroking soft things. So by using this foreshadowing tool, I think John Steinbeck is also showing us that there was no badness in what Lennie did to Curley's wife. It was purely accidental because he didn't understand what he was doing. The rabbits are also used as a really important symbol of the dream throughout the novella. We know from chapter 1, when George and Lennie are in the brush discussing, that for Lennie, the rabbits completely symbolise his dream. He says, "Let's have different colour rabbits, George." "Sure we will," George said sleepily. "Red and blue and green rabbits, Lennie. Millions of them." "Furry one, George, like the ones I've seen in the fair in Sacramento." "Sure, furry ones." From the very beginning, when they're discussing their dream, for Lennie, the rabbits is the dream. But also, we see this kind of ridiculous way that they talk about the dream from the very beginning. Lennie wants different colours, and George says, "Sure, red, blue and green." George doesn't actually see it as being something serious. It's something outlandish, different coloured rabbits. What's also interesting is that at the very beginning, again in the kind of Garden of Eden kind of imagery of chapter 1, actually there are rabbits that come out and are part of this imagery in the brush. And then when George and Lennie come down the highway and they hear the sound of George and Lennie coming, the rabbits hurried noiselessly for cover. So even at the very beginning, we've got that imagery of, if the rabbits represent the dream, as soon as George and Lennie come along, they disappear. So this idea of this dream that will never be actually realised. Of course, Candy's dog is also a really important symbol. Carl's right, Candy, that dog ain't no good to himself. I wish somebody would shoot me if I got old and a cripple. So think about what John Steinbeck is using the dog for here. So obviously it represents Candy in the sense that Candy is old. He's disabled in that his hand is damaged. And what the other ranch hands are saying to Candy here is there's no point in having him, and his companionship isn't valuable. He's not valuable to the farm, therefore let's get rid of him. And think about what John Steinbeck might be saying here about capitalism and people's value to society only being about what they can contribute in an economic sense. And that's linked as well when Candy says, I had him so long, had him since he was a pup. He talks about how he used to herd sheep with the dog. So the dog was valuable to the farm when it was young, and then as it got older, the other men just want it dead. So it emphasises Candy's isolation, but it also, John Steinbeck is using the dog to show how brutal it's become, where people have to contribute or they're kind of cast out, and it's that foreshadows quite a hopeless future for Candy here. The shooting of the dog, though, also foreshadows George shooting Lennie, because Candy says to George, I ought to have shot that dog myself, George. I shouldn't ought have let no stranger shoot my dog. And then we see at the end, George knows what he has to do. He knows that he has to shoot Lennie rather than let someone else do that. So it's used as a foreshadowing tool as well. The water snake is also an important image because if we think about the kind of beautiful description of the brush at the beginning and the end of the novella and this cyclical structure where they end up back in the same place, it's very much described as the Garden of Eden. But the snake, if we think about the allusion to Genesis, the snake is the kind of embodiment of the devil that comes and tempts Adam and Eve. So the snake is kind of a symbol of that fall from this natural beauty and bringing that evil into the world. And the water snake features both at the beginning and the end in the descriptions. What this reminds us of is how the dream will never be fulfilled. There's that hint that something evil is going to come. So what does the mark scheme say? Just a reminder, AO1, you've got to show a close knowledge and understanding of text, maintain a critical style, presenting an informed personal engagement. If you have a look at some of my other videos, I go through this in much more detail, but essentially you need to show that you have something to say. So if the question is, how is John Steinbeck presenting animals in the text, you need to actually have a point of view. You need to say, why is he doing it? And you therefore, for AO4, have to link to context and show understanding of the relationship between the text and context. So for those top marks, it is vital that you have a point of view. You need to actually say something. So if the question is, how does John Steinbeck use animals in Of Mice and Men? You need to tell us, is it because John Steinbeck uses animals as a way to show the unreality of the American dream? And then you could talk about the water snake, you could talk about the rabbits, you could talk about the mice. Alternatively, your point of view could be John Steinbeck uses images of animals and the natural world to contrast with the harsh reality of human-made society and what they have done, and how this leads to isolation in the characters. It doesn't matter what your point of view is, as long as you can therefore justify it, and every single one of your paragraphs links back. So as future revision, I would encourage you to go through this video again and use what I've said here to actually put it in an essay plan. How would you incorporate these things, write about them in detail, and link them back to that question? And make sure that you like and subscribe so that you get all my revision videos as I post them.